Claudia. I'm a self-proclaimed bookworm. My boyfriend, not so much. So I started summarizing entire books for him. Dramatic plot twists, romantic betrayals, magical quests, all of it. Basically, he gets the story without reading a single page. And now I'm doing the same for you. Welcome to The Whole Story, the channel where I read the book and then tell you the whole story, literally. Fantasy, romance, literary fiction. If it has yearning, magic, or emotional damage, I've got you covered. I'll tell you the whole story in 30 minutes or less, spoilers included. Yes, I will tell you who dies, who cries, and who should have just gone to therapy. So, if you like books, but you don't have the time to read all of them, or you just want to know what happens without the emotional labor, hit subscribe and let's write some endings together. Yeah, because life's too short to read 700 pages of slow burn, unless you're into it. I kinda am. So today we're going to talk about The Wedding People by Alison Espach. It's right here. So I actually listened to this one as an audiobook, and it is a fiction book. So the story takes place post-pandemic. It's 2 years after COVID, and follows the story of Phoebe Stone. She is a professor at uni. She's about 40 years old, and she arrives at a hotel called the Cornwall in Newport. It's a very fancy, very nice hotel by the ocean, and she's been dreaming about this hotel for a really long time. So we find out a bit more about Phoebe. She's actually a Victorianist, which means she's a literature professor focused on the 19th century, so the 1800s, so think Jane Eyre, the Bronte sisters, stuff like that. She used to be married to a guy called Matt. He was also a professor at the same university in St. Louis. They're from St. Louis. And he's a philosopher. And we find out that he actually cheated on her and left her about 2 years ago during the COVID. So right when COVID started, he actually fell in love with one of their friends and colleagues from work called Mia. And he left her. And he told her the truth like a few months after COVID, like in August. And he left her, and they've now been officially divorced for a year. But Phoebe is not really dealing well with this information. She still calls him her husband all the time. So she arrives at the hotel, dressed up really nicely with this satin silk dress. And she's checking in, and she starts to notice that everyone around her, everyone seems to know each other. And she figures out that they're all there for a wedding. So it's a wedding that is going to take a full week, and it's the wedding between a woman called Lila and Gary. And she checks in, and we quickly realize that there's been a mistake because they've actually booked out the whole hotel for the wedding. So Phoebe's not supposed to be there. It was a mistake that she was allowed to book the room, and she booked the nicest room, like the suite. She goes out to the elevator, the bride shows up, and the bride is like, hello, thank you so much for coming. Here's a gift bag and everything. So are you in Gary's family? She's like, no. Are you in my family? No. Then what are you doing here? And then Phoebe says, well, I'm here to take my own life. And the whole time Phoebe's talking like internally, and you see how she used to be a very scared person. Her mom died giving birth to her, so she didn't have a mom, and she has this whole thing about people that have moms have grown up to be more confident in themselves, and she's missing that. And all her life she was just trying to not be a burden to her dad, who raised her by himself, and she's always just wanted to be normal. That has caused her to keep a lot of things down, and she does feel a bit like a failure. She's had a lot of things happen to her over the last few years, and now she's decided she wants to be the kind of person that is honest. So even though this woman is a stranger, she tells her what she's there to do. The book kind of goes back and forth explaining what happened and where she is now. We start to understand why she's got to this point. She had a bit of a sad childhood, and she went to university and she studied everything. And a few years ago, she met her husband, Matt, and they were really in love, and they had a really nice, beautiful love story, and she really, really loved him. And then they tried to have kids, and they couldn't. It kind of ruined their marriage because it brought so many emotions and so many frustrations. They did like 5 cycles of IVF, and they're all unsuccessful. She had a couple of miscarriages, so she's got to this whole point where she's really sad. She hates her body. She feels like her body has failed her. And then it all led into her relationship with her husband, and eventually he started to fall in love with someone else, and then he left her. And this was right when COVID hit. So she was just stuck at home, teaching classes through Zoom to people that did not care. She was really alone. She tried therapy, virtual therapy. It didn't really help. She understood that she was depressed. She tried taking pills and everything. It did not help. And she was just really alone, drinking and everything. And yesterday, It was the first day of term of the semester. So she went to the university again, face to face, everything is back to normal. And the first people that she finds, it's her ex-husband, Matt, and Mia. She feels really bad, and I think this kind of triggers something that makes her realize that she really doesn't like her life and she hates the point where she got to right now. And when she gets home, her cat, who was the last person in her life that was there for her, was not alive anymore. And I think she just hits her rock bottom and she realized that she's alone and she has nobody. And she decides, you know what, like, this is it. So she had already looked at this hotel a long time ago with her husband, and she decides she wants to do it in a nice place with an ocean view. She books the Cornwall, it's $800 for the night, and she gets there, and turns out there's a wedding. When she talks to Lila at the elevator and she says this, Lila's freaking out. Lila's the typical bridezilla that, you know, everything has to happen perfectly. This is the most important week of her life because the wedding is not a day, it's a full week full of events and activities, and it's the most important time of her life. And here is Phoebe, a complete stranger that with her plans of taking her own life is going to ruin her wedding. So she's not so much worried about this woman that she doesn't know taking her own life. She's like, you're gonna ruin my wedding, you can't do it, you just wait a few days, please. And there's this whole like really funny interaction in the elevator. And Phoebe says like, no, this is it. I'm not going to postpone it. I'm sorry. And she's very straightforward. She's very honest. You know, at this point, you realize that everyone is talking to the bride like, oh my God, yes, everything is wonderful. And no one's honest with her anymore. She has food in her teeth and no one tells her the whole time. So then Phoebe's the only one that actually tells her things as they are. She tells her you have food in your teeth. And she doesn't try to please her like everybody else. So this creates a very honest and straightforward conversation between the two of them. And she says goodbye, like, you enjoy your wedding, I'm gonna do my thing. So she has this whole plan of how she's going to do it. She's been reading literature and love stories all her life, so she kind of wants like a story that's going to be told and all the details need to be right. So she's going to do it at sunset with her cat's pills. She's planning to overdose on the cat's pills. She is smoking some cigarettes in the balcony, drinking some wine, and she's going to order some room service. She calls for room service. They've canceled it for the cocktail reception, but she still decides to stick to it. She's just really hungry. So she's sitting in the balcony, and then the bride comes in. She knocks on the door and she comes in and she just starts talking and complaining about everything and people at the wedding. And they have a bit of a fight, but the whole thing is they're just very honest with each other. And you feel like the bride has been so preoccupied with everything and being the perfect bride, and Phoebe's the only person that doesn't care. They have a conversation at the balcony. They actually look at all the people at the cocktail reception, and Lila starts to tell her about her family and about the fact that she's doing this wedding because her dad asked her. He died about a year or so ago from colon cancer. One of his dying wishes was to see her get married. And he actually left all this money for her to get married. And after he died, she felt like this is what she had to do. So she's actually spent like $1 million on this wedding, which is absolutely crazy. And she's getting married to his dad's doctor. She's an assistant curator at an art gallery. One day he came in and he was looking at a painting and they kind of talked a little bit. A few days later, she went to the consultation with her dad and he was the doctor. So it felt like kismet. It felt like a coincidence, and they started talking and everything. And he actually told her that he thought he could help her dad and maybe give him a few more years. So I think that kind of created this savior image for her. So she kind of fell in love with Gary because he was giving her this hope. And it was a very whirlwind romance. You know, they went on a trip to Europe and they traveled around. And then when they got to Germany, he proposed, even though they had only been dating for 6 months. And she accepted. And here they are. Even though her dad has already passed away, she decided to go ahead with the wedding and planned everything to perfection. So she starts talking about everybody. She talks about her mom, how she's afraid that she's going to do a horrible speech. She's not the most caring mother and she's probably drinking a lot already. But she really, really wanted to have a speech. So she let her do it on the first night because that's the least important one. And, you know, Phoebe, without wanting to, she starts to get involved and she starts to be curious. But anyways, Lila leaves and Phoebe's alone and she keeps watching the wedding people. But then in the end, she decides it's after sunset now. I just have to get on with it. And she keeps remembering about like little details, and like the fact that her therapist said that she would never take her own life because she was not the type. And she's like, well, I am the type. Watch me. She takes the pills and she's just lying there in bed waiting for them to take effect. Then she can hear through the balcony the noise downstairs, and she can hear the mother, Patricia, starting to do her speech. And she starts listening to the speech, and it starts really bad. She's like saying really bad things about Lila, about how she has no imagination. She was not a creative child, never cared about art or anything like that. And Phoebe finds herself being very curious about the speech. She starts to feel her body feel all weird. She realizes like, no, what am I doing? Like, I want to stay here. Like, I want to hear the rest of the speech. I want to know if it works out or not. I want to know if they're going to get married and be happy. I want to know how the rest of the plot is going to go, and she explains she's the kind of person that can never put down a book or stop watching a movie. She has to watch things until the end. So it really freaks her out that she's never going to find out if Patricia turns the speech around and says a nice thing about her daughter or not. So she freaks out. She runs to the bathroom, she pukes the pills, and she falls asleep. She wakes up a bit later, like around 3 a.m. and she's like, my God, what am I doing? Like, I can't believe I almost took my life. Like, yes, I got to a really dark space, but I still have more to do. I still have more life to live. I'm just going to keep going, do one thing at a time. What's something that I can do right now? I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to go for a walk. She goes for a walk. It's 3 a.m. Everything is deserted. And she's around the hotel and she finds the hot tub. So she goes into the hot tub with her underwear and she's just enjoying herself, and a man joins in. And she's talking to this guy and she feels like an instant connection because he's like looking into her eyes and everything, and they have a really honest conversation. And he's there like, aren't you here for the wedding? She's like, no. And he's like, what are you here for? She's like, well, I was here to take my own life. And he's like, oh, shit. But I've decided not to do it. And he's like, well, that's an important piece of information. And then they just kind of laugh about it a little bit and they talk. And they really open up with each other and they talk about this whole thing of like a stranger at 3 a.m. And she feels really connected with him and she feels attracted to him. So she's about to leave and she looks at him and she's like, I want to fuck you. And he's like, oh. And she's like, oh, you're with someone? He's like, yes, I am. She's like, it's okay, it's fine. And he's like, yeah, I mean, too bad. So she leaves and she's really happy, the whole time. She's like, I can't believe I'm alive. I should be dead right now. So I'm just going to change my life. I need to be more honest. I need to be more straightforward. That's why she said that to the guy. And she starts to really notice new things, the wind, the stars, her body. She starts to love her body again. And she starts to notice everything that her body does do, that it's not a failure. She goes to bed and she's really feeling like a new person. And the next morning she wakes up and Lila comes into the room. She doesn't acknowledge the fact that she's still alive. And she just comes in and she's just complaining. And she looks at Phoebe. She's like, you should come sailing with us. And Phoebe's like, no, I shouldn't. She's like, yeah, we need more people on the boat. You should just come with us. And Lila actually says, I've booked out the room for the entire week because I don't want any more strangers here. You're the only stranger allowed. So you can just stay the whole week if you want. That's fine. So she joins them for sailing. She has no clothes or anything. She has to borrow clothes. She joins them for sailing. She meets the rest of the wedding people, all her best friends, her sister-in-law, all the people that she had heard about. And then they get to the wharf where the boat is, and she meets the groom, Gary, and turns out he's the man from the hot tub. So the man that she was flirting with and feeling a deep connection with, and she said she wanted to sleep with him, turns out that he's the groom, the doctor. So she meets everybody. She talks to him. He doesn't admit that they've met each other before. She meets his brother-in-law as well. So Gary was previously married, but his wife died of cancer, lung cancer. And they actually had a daughter called Mel, but everyone calls her Juice for some reason. The deceased wife, Wendy, she had a brother called Jim. And when she passed away, Jim was there for Gary and they really bonded and they feel like brothers. So basically he's there and he's his best man again. So they go sailing and she starts to talk to everybody and everyone is like, who is this person? And everyone just kind of starts to click with her. She talks to everybody and she just seems to understand everybody because, I mean, she's 40 years old. She's a grown-ass woman. she knows life, she understands things, and she doesn't feel the need to impress anyone because she doesn't know these people. So she can just be herself for once in her life. She can just say what she means, she can say what she wants, and not be afraid of how she's perceived. She's been keeping herself contained all her life, trying to do what's right and behave how she's supposed to, and now she doesn't have to do that anymore. She's supposed to be dead by now. So, new life, new me. The bride, she's very stressed about everything, and she's very concerned about like, oh, this is not how it's supposed to go, and what am I supposed to do, and these people are so annoying, these people are this, and she's really freaking out. I mean, she's also younger, she's like 26, 27 years old, and Gary's older, right? So he's also 40. So there's this whole age gap thing, and you can see how he's more mature, more calm, more steady, and she's still very young in a sense of she's so hopeful for life, and she doesn't know what is going to be, and she's just kind of waiting and looking for someone to help her with life. And that's a bit what Gary has done, right? Gary went through very deep grief when his wife died, and it took him a really long time to move on. And then when he did, he was just trying to feel normal again. And that's when he met Lila, and that's when he fell in love, because he loved the fact that she made him feel normal again. Like he was able to do this, he was able to do life. So there's very interesting insights and conversations and introspective thoughts from Phoebe's side as she goes through all of this, and she meets all these people that are in very different parts of their lives. But going back to the story. So they're on the sailing boat. Phoebe's feeling happy that she's feeling the wind and the ocean and smelling things and, enjoying her new life. They go back to the hotel, and Lila's maid of honor, she was supposed to arrive that day, but turns out her kid has COVID, so she cannot come anymore, and she's freaking out, and she just asks Phoebe to be her maid of honor. She's like, what do you mean? Like, I barely know you, we're strangers. It's like, yeah, but you're the only one that I trust to be honest with me and just help me get through this week. So she actually accepts. She's like, yeah, sure, why not? While this is happening, it's already been 2 days since she left, so her boss is calling her, sending her messages. Her ex-husband, Matt, is also calling. People are worried. She does text her boss back saying, sorry, you'll need to find someone to cover me for the rest of the semester. I'm not sure when I'll be back, but I'll let you know. And she doesn't answer to her ex-husband. She says, I don't owe him anything. He's not part of my life anymore. He didn't want to be my husband anymore. I don't owe him anything. So I'm not going to answer. So there's a lot of activities happening. Like I said, there's a bridal brunch, there's a bachelorette party, and there's all these preparation happening. She does have to eventually go and buy clothes. She goes with Juice, so Gary's daughter. They do connect a lot because she talks about her mother, Wendy, and she feels like with Lila, they can never talk about Wendy. It's like a taboo topic because she doesn't want to talk about Gary's ex-wife, who is dead now. But with Phoebe, she understands grief, she understands loss, and she's not afraid to talk about death at all. So she really connects with both Gary whenever they talk and his daughter. During the bachelorette, they have a spa day, then they have a sex workshop with a giant panda expert mating person. It's really funny. And they talk about intimacy and their sex lives and everything. And you start to see, throughout all of this, you start to see that the relationship between Lila and Gary is not as deep as it should be, and she just thinks that Gary's wonderful and Gary's a nice guy and Gary's this and Gary's that, but not once does she say why she actually loves Gary and why she wants to have a life with him. So it's a bit weird. Then they also have dinner, and there's a tarot card reading thing where actually the tarot person, she tells Lila, you don't know who you are, you're a lot of different people and you're just changing personalities all the time. And at first she's really upset by it, but then she actually understands, that's true. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I know what I don't want. I know what I'm afraid of in life. And then I just do what's necessary to avoid getting there. So it's also a bit of a aha moment for Lila to understand that she doesn't know who she is and what she wants from life, which is normal for a 26-year-old, let's be honest. And when Phoebe has the tarot card reading, actually all the cards are kind of pointing to you are here, there's a hermit or something. And the lady, she's like, I don't know what to tell you. The cards are just telling me you are here. That's it. Children are not in the future for you. But I do see love. You just have to wait for it. It's not going to happen right away. But if you just wait, it will come in the future. And she also says something about you'll come into property and there will be money involved. And she's like, okay, weird. But when she keeps saying like, you are here, like she actually starts to cry because it's true. Like she shouldn't be here right now. And she is. They go for dinner afterwards. They go to a club. They get drunk and everything. Lila gets really drunk. And then Phoebe takes her back to the hotel. And they're just talking about everything. And Lila starts to open up. And she says that she actually has a crush on Jim, the brother-in-law. And that she has fantasies about him. Because during the sex workshop, that was one of the questions. And she wasn't really honest or upfront about it. And now that she's drunk, she's actually saying the truth to Phoebe. Because she trusts Phoebe. And she says that she does fantasize about Jim. And in the end, she actually says, I don't want to marry Gary. Like, sometimes I hate him. Because he said that he could save my dad and then he didn't. And sometimes I look at him and I can only think about the fact that he didn't save my dad and I hate him. And Phoebe's like, then what are you doing? She's like, yeah, I don't want to marry him. And she's like, okay, that's fine. Tomorrow we'll deal with it. And secretly, Phoebe's kind of glad with this turn of events because throughout this whole week, she has been getting more connected to Gary and she is kind of starting to have feelings for Gary. But the whole time she's like, no, shut it down. He loves Lila and they're happy together and they're going to get married. Knows that there's nothing she can do. She's just there to help Lila. The next day, Lila wakes up and she's like, yep, all good. I'm a bit hungover, but let's go. There's some more things to prepare for the wedding. And Phoebe's like, what are you talking about? What about what you said yesterday? She's like, what did I say yesterday? And she just pretends that nothing happened. And it's really weird, but Phoebe's like, okay, sure. And Lila's supposed to go surfing with Juice and Gary, but she decides she doesn't want to go surfing, so she asks Phoebe to go instead. So Phoebe keeps getting pushed into all of these situations where they actually behave like a family and they get to know each other, and inadvertently Lila is pushing her towards Gary all the time, which is a bit weird. That night, Phoebe's trying to prepare the speech, the maid of honor speech that she's going to say during the rehearsal dinner, and Jim is doing the same. So they actually end up talking a bit and they take some edibles because they think that getting high is going to help them be more creative and write a nice speech. And then Jim admits that he actually liked Lila first. So the reason why they had gone to the art gallery a year or so ago is because Jim had seen Lila and they actually had talked once and they felt a connection and he was really struck with her. And then he just convinced Gary to go with him to the art gallery and kind of as his wingman, but he didn't say that. And then when they got to the art gallery, Lila talked to Gary, and then the whole thing of him being the doctor of her father, they started dating, and then Jim never said anything, but he actually really liked Lila, and he wanted to invite her on a date, and he never did. So now here he is, trying to write a best man speech for a guy that he considers his brother and wants to be happy, and the girl that he once thought could be his future. So it's really sad. Parallel to this, Phoebe has been looking for ways to continue her life because now that she's decided to live, she actually has to start thinking about the practicalities. She knows that she doesn't want to go back to St. Louis anymore. She wants to leave her past life behind. There's nothing for her there. So she actually starts looking for jobs in Newport. And she finds a posting on Craigslist about an ad for a winter keeper for a mansion. And she actually goes there and talks to the guy, and it's really nice. And it's basically the job of maintaining this huge mansion and taking care of it throughout the winter for like 3-4 months. So she goes there, visits and everything, and it's really nice. Gary actually goes with her, and then they offered her the job and she accepts. So she's already thinking about like what she's going to do when she moves on. She also decides to get a dog, and she finds a little dog called Frank that she's planning to keep because she wants company. Then we come to the rehearsal dinner, and it's really awkward. Lila is really freaking out. Everything has to be like really fast and things are taking too long. So she's freaking out. At this point, Phoebe and Jim, they kind of hit it off because of the whole being high together and writing the speech. So they're kind of flirting, touching each other. And she's thinking like, maybe I'll sleep with Jim tonight. And all along, Gary and Lila are looking at them like, what's happening? And you start to see that they're getting a bit jealous, both of them. And they're a bit behind on time. So Lila's like, you know what? There's not going to be any speeches. And Jim gets upset about it. And Jim is always like calling her out on her shit. and also being very honest with Lila. And he just stands up and starts giving his speech anyways. And he actually says in his speech that he liked Lila first, and she's really struck, like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you hitting on me on my wedding? And she gets a bit upset, but they move on. There's so much drama the whole time, so much drama. Then there's some fireworks. The night ends. Phoebe goes back to the hotel. Someone knocks on the door, and it's Gary, and they're talking, and he's about to say that he thinks he's making a big mistake. And they're finally going to talk about what's between them, and maybe he shouldn't get married. And then someone else knocks on the door, and it's her husband. Matt is back. And so Gary leaves, and then Matt and Phoebe talk a lot, and he's just apologizing the whole time. He says that he was really worried for her. And he's basically saying, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that to you. I hurt you so much. I left you behind. And I shouldn't have done that. I love you. You're my wife. I don't know what I was thinking. It's not the same with Mia. I want you back. And you're like, come on, seriously. They talk. She's a bit tempted to go back to him. But in the end, she understands it's over. This is it. I don't wish you any harm, which is a big step for her. The day of the wedding, they're getting ready and the bridal suite. And Lila's really calm. She's very serene. And then they're getting ready, just the two of them. And she tells Phoebe, like, I really thought that something was going to ruin this wedding. At some point, I thought it was going to be you. And Phoebe says, like, yeah, but I won't. No, I didn't, and I won't. It's like, yeah, I can see, like, so many things could have ruined this wedding. But no, it's a beautiful day. It doesn't even rain. I don't know why. They are getting in the car to go to the venue. And the car is wrong. She wanted a vintage car. And then there was a problem, they had to change the car, and she doesn't like the car. So she does like a big fuss about the car, that it's not the right car. And then she kind of admits to herself that she doesn't want to marry Gary. Finally, after all of this back and forth, she admits she doesn't want to marry Gary. And she's not happy, and this is not what she wants. And she was hoping that something would ruin the wedding because she doesn't want to go ahead with it. She decides to leave for Canada. She just wants to travel, so she actually takes off with her mom. And Phoebe's the one that has to go to the wedding venue. She's the one that walks down the aisle and goes to Gary and says, Lila's not coming. The wedding is not happening. Gary takes off, disappears. Turns out he went to the cemetery to see his late wife. And then everything kind of moves on. You know, it's the last day. They're supposed to check out. There's a new wedding arriving. So you can see how, like, the hotel, everything just keeps moving. This whole big thing, this big week that meant so much to all of them was just a week. Phoebe's making plans for the future. She's packing her things. She has to go to St. Louis to, you know, pack up her life and move to the mansion. In the end, she finds Gary. She finds him in the hot tub, and they have a conversation. He also admits to himself that he knew the wedding shouldn't have gone ahead, but he didn't really have the courage, and he wasn't brave enough to call it off, even though he knew that he should. And he knows that he didn't love Lila for the right reasons, and he didn't love her how she wanted to be loved. He realizes that it's a good thing they didn't get married. And what's next? So she says that she's going to work at the mansion, and he had given her his number. And he says, you know, like, if you see a ghost, because it's a big mansion and they talk about there being ghosts there, if you see a ghost, just give me a call. She's like, okay, what if I don't see any ghosts? He's like, call me anyway. He leaves, and they know that they'll see each other again eventually. And she packs up her things, and she's checking out, and she's just standing in the hotel lobby looking at all the new wedding people and the new bride that feels like this is the most important day for her. And she leaves, and that's it. And there's so much promise in the future that she's leaving a completely different woman than when she arrived. And there's so much possibility for her life and for her and Gary, maybe. They don't say it explicitly, but you kind of know that it will happen eventually. Just like the tarot card reader lady had said. And that's it. It's a very interesting book. It's a bit sad at times, but it also makes you think about what it means to be alive and what's worth living for. So that's it for today. Thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you next time.